Tilea's Troubles, Part 127. But Does It Augur Well? The Island of Sartosa, Autumn 2404. 5 captains and first mates, each from different crews, being the quorum required by the Grand Articles for the swearing of a new captain into the fleet, had gathered near the pledging ring, where Kroll awaited them. The Admiral, Leopold Volker, was present, of course, as well as Captain Anselm van Bass, and 3 first mates, being the dwarf Bald Cusmul of Captain Ledforge's crew, the goblin Kobok Drald of Bagnam Fark's crew, and Jort, more commonly known as Jambalo, the one-legged representative of Captain Garik. Kroll towered over them, as would any ogre, although he was tall even among his own kind. His blade alone was the length of a boarding pike, and his piece, held like a pistol, was akin in size to a swivel gun, and not one of the smaller ones. He wore an iron belly plate, as did so many ogres, which might be supposed a hazard for a seafarer, considering how much quicker he would sink should he ever enter the water. But then, his general bulk, heavy woolen coat, and huge leather boots would hardly prove conducive to floating. Kobok emitted a strange, guttural squeaking sound, as if his breathing had become suddenly laboured. Most took it to mean he was afraid, what with him being a goblin. Only Bald Cusmul was shorter than he. In truth, the taller men next to him were nearly as nervous, just much better at concealing the fact. All except the Admiral, who had seen such terrors in his days that a brute ogre was simply another encounter along the way. So it was. He was merely studying Kroll, as if to judge him, to weigh his worth, to decide what use he might be. And well the Admiral might, as Kroll was here to be admitted to the fleet, and to receive a seat in the Captain's Council, despite the fact there was no seat large enough to accommodate him, nor even quarters high enough to admit him, apart from those upon his own ship, but that was a concern for later. He was the only ogre among his crew, the rest being men and orcs, some of the latter weighing twice as much as the men, but were no taller. There were rumours that once he had rat men in his crew, but there were none here, which allowed those who doubted such could be the case to be more convinced that it never was. The crew were mostly armed with axes, either two-handed or boarding axes, and were famously skilled in their use, either in a fight or to expertly and quickly hack their way through bulkheads. One might wonder why they were needed, when their captain could surely slice, perhaps even punch, his way through even the toughest old oak. But he could hardly be everywhere at once, could he? Besides, as he himself had declared, having adopted what he believed were the ways of a gentleman captain, such manual labour would disparage the height of an ogre in him. Why stoop to the level of a rude mechanical seaman, when he had servants to do such work? Fighting was, of course, a suitable pursuit for a noble captain, but carpentry was not. Kroll's standard bore a death's head above an hourglass, not because he and his crew were Moorites in faith, being instead worshippers of Stromfels or Ranald, according to their current needs, but because the image was intended as a statement of intent. If you argue with us, your time will run out. The crew were grizzled veterans in the main, as were so many in the fleet, having served various realms, whether on fighting ships or merchant vessels, until greed, misfortune, desperation or devilry drove them to become pirates. Some had the dead-eyed stare of men who had long since abandoned any hope or compassion for others, while some bore the determined expression of men driven by a powerful desire for wealth, with not a care for what mayhem and misery they caused in its pursuit. The orcs, however, were simply happy to eat when they wanted, fight when they could, and make cruel sport out of their enemies' misfortunes. None of the crew, however, misbehaved in Kroll's presence, for he was a hard taskmaster, and all knew that he could slice a crew member in half at the drop of a hat if they displeased him, acting as judge and jury in such matters. But that was rare, for they always went out of their way to keep him happy, resulting in a fruitful career upon the seas so far, despite the malicious rumours of dealing with rat men. Until, that is, recently, when more and more ships, even merchants, were carrying guns, and ever larger contingents of professional fighters as well as sailors. The threat of the Sartosan fleet had caused this sudden increase in armament, making piracy by individual ships that bit harder. Kroll declared that this was why he had decided to join the fleet, to be part of a force large enough to plunder entire cities. He wanted a share in such rich prizes, and he knew there were several great cities yet to be looted. Admiral Volker, as was his right, spoke first. "This oath you are to take, Captain Kroll, is no petty thing. You are about to stand in the pledging ring, also named the Augur Circle, and not just because of the giant augurs it is fashioned from, but because any lie told within it augurs ill, very ill, for him who utters it." Kroll grinned, revealing several teeth fashioned of gold. It was a sight somehow more disturbing than his usual scowl.
"That I need not fear, but I do expect that by holding to my oath it will augur well for me."
"I shall do my best to ensure that," answered the Admiral. "For when my captains thrive, I thrive. We all thrive. Do you know how well our enterprises have gone? They were just the start. This is a time for pirates."
"Then let's not waste time on swearing, and get to sailing," said Kroll.
The Admiral nodded his agreement, then spoke to Jort Jambalo. "You know the words of the oath, Jort. You shall speak them, and you, Kroll, must affirm all the clauses. Now, take your place in the ring." Kroll strode into the ring, stepping over a broken augur shell, then turned to look back at the gathered officers as they shuffled over to face him better. Jort began immediately.
"Do you swear to obey the Admiral in battle?"
"Aye,"
growled Kroll.
"And be faithful to your fleet companions in all designs?"
"I will,"
answered the ogre.
"so they'd better be good designs."
"And to strive to accomplish all ventures agreed to by vote of the fleet's captains?"
"No point in starting what you don't intend to finish. I'll see everything through to the end."
"Do you promise always to attend at the agreed rendezvous, responding whenever called upon?"
"If the wind and weather can be overcome, I'll be there."
"Will you die fighting rather than flee from an equal number of opposers, unless ordered to do so by the Admiral?"
"I've never fled any opposer, and damn them who claim I might have done. But aye, if the Admiral thinks there's nothing to be gained from a fight, then I'll follow his orders accordingly."
"Will you swear never to desert your fleet companions, or leave them wounded in an enemy's hands, if the Admiral wants them back?"
"The dead can rot on the sea bottom, but aye, if the Admiral wants a fellow rescued, then I'll do what I can, for all the usual compensations."
"Will you help your fleet companions if captured, imprisoned, sick, or otherwise in need?"
"I will do as much as any pirate in this fleet, but I don't profess any knowledge of physic."
Jort glanced at the Admiral, who said, "That'll do. He is joining as a ship's captain, not a ship's surgeon." Jort nodded, then continued.
"Now, repeat after me. And this oath, when I break in the least tittle—"
"And this oath, when I break in the least tittle—"
"May Manan and Stromfel's curse befall me."
"May Manan and Stromfel's curse befall me."
"And may the greatest scurvies, plagues, and damnation seize me here and hereafter."
"And all those things, and worse if you like, for I shall never break my oath. Are we done?"
"We're done, Captain," said the Admiral. "Welcome to the fleet." He turned to Kroll's crew and asked, "What say you?" In answer came a confusion of ayes and huzzahs, and not a complaint amongst them. Admiral Volker's fleet and army had just grown that bit stronger.